Hey guys, welcome back to another Easy Game Mechanics tutorial. I've had a lot of requests recently to do an NPC dialogue tutorial, so that's what we're going to do. What I've got set up here is a scene. We've got the green character here, which is our default player character. The only thing I have on this character is the platform behavior. I've also got this little red character who's going to be the NPC. There is nothing with that one, it is literally just a sprite. I've done a key sprite, which again is just a sprite, one single frame. I've got a text box, which is this one here with no text in it. I've just got a font selected and a size. And I've got a tile background, which is just tile background too. And I've just dragged the text box over the top and I've set the horizontal and the vertical alignment to be in the center. So if I type something, it just pops up right in the center. I've got this sprite here, which is just a simple sprite. I've set the opacity to 50% and I've resized it, and I've just called it door trigger. I've also got the door, which again is just a sprite. It has the solid behavior enabled. It has two frames, a closed frame and an open frame. The bounding box is set to the entirety of the surface area. And the animation speed is on 0 because I don't want it to play. It's just going to be in that default shut position when we start. Now, what I want to happen is when we overlap this red door trigger area, I want the NPC to pop up a dialog box that says, "You don't have the key," if we don't have the key, and then it won't let us in. If we do have the key, I don't want the dialog box to pop up at all, and I just want to be able to open the door and go through into this secret room right here. So this is how I'm going to set that up. If you look at my event sheet, I've got nothing on here now. The default controls are enabled on the player sprite so that I can move it. First thing we need to do is go to the event sheet and set a global variable called key collected. This is going to be a boolean, and this is going to determine whether or not we have that key in our possession. The initial value is going to be unchecked because we don't have that value when we start, and when we pick up the key we will have that value. So let's go ahead and put that in now. Let's add an event, player character, on collision with another object. We're going to say key, and the action is going to be key destroy, because we want to destroy the key when we touch it, because that will then give the impression that we've collected it. We're going to add in an action, and we're going to go to system, and we're going to get that global variable. We're going to set boolean key collected to true. Now if we play, you'll see how that works. We pick up the key, but we don't know that we have it until we come to the door. So now let's code that section in. Go back to the event sheet, we're going to go add an event, and we're going to say player character, and we're going to say is overlapping another object. And we're going to say door trigger. Now, when we overlap the door trigger, one of two things is going to happen. We're either going to open the door if we have the key, or we're going to trigger the NPC character to speak to us. So let's do the door open first, because that is the easiest bit. Select the block of the event block that we have here, push B on the keyboard. We're going to say we're going to go back and say system, and we're going to check to see if that key collected boolean is true. If it is true, we're going to say add action. We're going to go to the door sprite, which I haven't named, and we're going to set the frame to frame 1, which is the open frame. We're also going to disable its solid behavior so we can walk through it. So we're going to go solid, set disabled. Let's go back. Let's try and go through the door first. Can't do anything. Pick up the key. And now we can go through. So that works just fine. I mean, that's pretty standard stuff. That's not NPC dialogue by any means, but that's the first part of what we're trying to accomplish. So let's go back and select that entire block that we have here with player character. Push B on the keyboard, and we're going to say now, if I click in this little section here and hold down Control, I can drag out a copy. Push I on the keyboard to invert it, and we're going to say now, if we don't have the key, what do we want to happen? Now, I like to make the NPC boxes a little nicer to look at, so let's make it tween up and out when we want the NPC to talk, and it's just a nice way of adding a little bit of polish. So first thing we need to do is add a tween behavior to this dialog box. So let's go over to behaviors, add new behavior, tween. Now you can see the image point of this block is in the top left hand corner. If you come over to the properties, let's select the bottom, which puts it right in the center. Don't worry if it moves, just move it back. I want it right at the bottom in the middle because I want the tween to come up when the dialog box opens. So go back to your event sheet. If key is not collected and we're overlapping that door trigger, then what we want to do is call, I think we'll put it in a function and we'll call the function. So let's right click, let's add a function, and let's just say NPC, put that in lowercase, NPC speaking. This will be the function, the NPC speaking function. Now, when we call this function, we're going to want to add an action, and we're going to go to the tile background. That's the background of the NPC dialog box, and we're going to tween one property. That property is going to be the height. The end value, let's have a look. Just leave it at 0 for now. The end value is going to be 3 blocks high, so that's 16, 32, 48. So the end value is going to be 48. The time it takes to do that is going to be 0.5 seconds. Now, the ease, I want it to kind of pop up. So let's do out elastic and see what that looks like. Sometimes you just got to play around with these. If I go to now the system if key is not collected and add an action, and we go functions and we call the NPC speaking function. Now if we don't have the key when we overlap that, we should be able to just call this function in. Now what might happen is it might happen over and over and over again, because effectively what's happening inside the game's brain is we're not going to have the key and we're overlapping this thing. So as long as we stay overlapping it, this is going to run over and over again. But let's just see how it reacts to that. Okay, it's not doing anything because stupidly we need to make this 0. Otherwise it's got nowhere to go. Oh, there you go. It didn't do it over and over again. It did it once, which is fine. Now, I quite like that. Now, as part of the NPC function, at the end of the 0.5 seconds, so let's go system, wait, 0.5 seconds. So we're going to wait for that previous tween to happen. Then we're going to go add action, and we're going to go text NPC, which is the text box over the top of that background box. And then we're going to say typewriter text, and we're going to say typewriter text, you do not have a key. That's going to take 1 second to type out. And if we play that now, nothing happens, because where's my text box? My text box is up here and it's white, so we couldn't see anything. And still nothing's, oh, there it is. You do not have a key. So when we overlap this thing, what's happening is, for some reason, we're overlapping the door trigger and it's waiting for us to unoverlap this door trigger. So if I go on show polygons, that's our dialog box there. That pops up just fine, but it's not playing this. So let's just set text to that. In fact, let's just write it in here. You do not have a key. So that'll just be there the whole time. Let's just change the color slightly so we can see it. So that's always there now. And then that pops up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the text box itself not visible, And then in this function here, instead of just putting that typewriter text in, I'm just going to say NPC, and I'm going to go set visible to true. So visible. And there it is. You do not have a key. So I don't know why the typewriter text was playing up, because it should have just typed it in immediately after we finished this sequence here, but it's fine. This works just as well. So let's change the text back to white. Test it one more time to make sure it's not a fluke. There it is. Now, when we leave this zone, I want the text box to go away. So let's go back to the event sheet. Add an event. We're going to say player. And we're going to say is overlapping another object again and select the door trigger. But this time I'm going to invert that statement by pushing I on the keyboard. And I'm going to make it not true. So if we're not overlapping that object, then I basically want to just do the reverse of this function. So let's create a second function. And we're going to call NPC finished. And I'm going to basically just copy everything. I'm going to drag it down, holding control on the keyboard. And I'm going to reverse this. N value is going to be 0. I'm going to wait 0.5 seconds. And I'm going to set this invisible. And now I'm going to go add action. And I'm going to call that function, NPC finished, if we're not overlapping the door trigger. There we go. And now, if we don't have the key, he speaks to us. And if we do, oh, that takes 0.5 seconds to disappear. That's why it's up there. So let's get rid of the 0.5 seconds. In fact, we need to make that disappear first, then wait 0.5 seconds, and then close it. That's why it was looking a bit weird. So pings up, pings down. Yeah, it's doing that weird this thing because it's trying to do it multiple times, because this is true a lot. So all we need to do is select that block, push B on the keyboard, double click, select system, and we'll come down and we're going to say trigger once while true. And we're going to call that function on the trigger once while true. And that should solve everything. And it doesn't solve anything. Put it back up in there a sec. Delete trigger once while true. So let's select this block here, push B on the keyboard, double click, select system, trigger once while true, and drag the NPC finish down into trigger once while true. There we go. So the way I'm going to fix that, I think, is I'm going to change this to say is overlapping. I'm going to change it to just say is colliding with, because I only want it to happen once anyway. And I'm going to change this one here to say that one actually can say is not overlapping. So what I think we'll do to combat that flickering issue with the dialog box is I think we're going to add a command prompt. So we're going to use the keyboard. So I've got the keyboard object in my object types. If you don't have the keyboard, you can just double click and you can come down to inputs, and it will be in this line here along with gamepad, mouse and touch. You can just click keyboard. You can add it into your game. Once it's added into the game, you can reference it. So let's go now into the event sheet. And we're going to go to this code here that says if we're overlapping the door, if key is collected and if key is not collected. Now, before all of this, we're going to need to put in a new event. So select the whole block, push B on the keyboard, drag it to the top, and we're going to say keyboard on key pressed, and we're going to say E. On key pressed E. Now, on key pressed E, we're now going to need to check these two things. So hold down Shift, select them both, drag them in, so they're nesting underneath on keyboard E pressed. And then this is going to say when we press E, now we're going to run these checks. If the key is not collected, we're going to call the NPC speaking. And then if it is collected, we're going to open the door. So let's just check to see if it works in terms of opening the door first. We're going to collect the key. We're going to come back. You can see the dialog box doesn't trigger, which is fine. I can push E on the keyboard and I can go in. Now we've opened the door using the E key. If I come back and I try and open the door without it, it pops up perfectly and says you do not have a key, and then it disappears when we leave the dialog box. And there we go. That's how we create a NPC dialog. And then the last thing I'm going to want to do is go back and make this block initially not visible. Checking over the code one more time, we've got one global boolean that detects whether we've picked up the key. When we pick up the key, we destroy it. We set the key collected boolean to true. Then we've got this block here, which basically runs everything. Let's just move this function down here. This block here basically runs everything that says if we're overlapping the door trigger, which is this red box here, then when we push E, if the key is collected, we open the door. If the key is not collected, we call the NPC speaking function. If we are not overlapping the door, we call the NPC function finished. When we are speaking, if we're calling this function, the tile background is going to tween up into an elastic out tween. Wait 0.5 seconds, set the NPC text visible to true. On finish, we're going to reverse that, set it invisible, wait 0.5 seconds, and then close the box. And then what that looks like is you do not have a key. So now if I walk over to the door and I push E to enter, you do not have a key. If I go get the key and I come back to the door, I can open the door and come in the secret room. Now if I try and get in the door here, now if I push E on the keyboard, the NPC character kindly tells me that I do not have a key, which is fine, because there's a key right over here. I can go pick this key up and I can come back, and then when I try and get in the door this time, I can go straight through. If you found this tutorial useful in any way, please do consider leaving a like on the video. It does help get the video out to more people. If you haven't already subscribed and you want to see more content just like this, then please do hit the subscribe button. If you want to submit your game to my I Play Your Indie Games, if you want to submit your game to my Indie Games of the Week series, then there is a link in the description as well. If you're making your own indie game and you want me to play it on the channel, I play your indie games once or twice a month. If you're making your own indie game and you want to submit it to the channel for a playthrough, I do play your indie games on the channel on a regular basis. There is a link in the description. You can submit it there. And if you haven't already considered it, and if you'd like to get yourself some free pixel art, tile sets, music, or royalty free on a monthly basis, you can consider coming. And if you want to get yourself access to free pixel art, tile sets, and music on a monthly basis, consider coming. And if you want to get yourself access to royalty-free music, pixel art, and tile sets, and my Construct 3 source files, along with Construct 3 support, consider becoming a Patreon. There's a link in the description as well. And speaking of Patreon, a massive shout out to my wonderful Patreon supporters: James Welch, Fusel CC, Basic Terror, Zan, Retro Galaxy, Van, Mushingski, Jet Simon, Olivier Bernier, Amari Lewis, Matt, Enmark Games, and Seth Coble. Thank you guys so much for supporting my game dev journey, and I hope you're enjoying the monthly benefits. If you made it this far, guys, thanks very much for sticking around. I hope you found the content useful. Until next time, have a great day, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.